Her name was Sara Baartman, daughter of South Africa. She went to Europe willingly, thinking she would find riches and fame. They fooled her. In Europe, she found humiliation, forced to be a spectacle because many of them had never seen a naked black woman's body. They nicknamed her Hottentot Venus. They were fascinated by her large, full breasts, big hips, buttocks, and big lips. They stared, touched, and laughed. She couldn't really be human because she didn't look like a white woman. Her skin was the deepest shade of the darkest chocolate. Her hair was a thick black cloud on her head. Doctors and medical students scribbled madly in their medical journals descriptions of her body. She was later sold to a circus where she danced naked for the entertainment of white people. In their mind, her large breasts, buttocks, and her elongated labia made her inferior and oversexed. This justified their inhumane treatment of the black man and the black woman. No longer wanted in the circus, she became a prostitute and later died from loneliness, shame, and disease. She had been in Europe for only 5 years and was only 25 when she died. But her story doesn't end there. Even in death, she wasn't allowed dignity. Europeans were fascinated and obsessed with Sara Baartman. When she died, they cut out her vagina, her brain, her skeleton, preserved them in jars, and placed them all on display along with a plaster of her actual body. For 160 years, people could walk into a museum, look at Sara Baartman's vagina, her brain, her skeleton, and see what she looked like naked. In 1974, they took down the display, but they still kept her remains. It wasn't until 2002 that her remains were returned to her homeland and given a long overdue proper burial. Some would say Hottentot Venus, aka Sara Baartman, was one of the first video vixens. Before television, before radio, Sara Baartman became the blueprint for degrading and humiliating the black woman on a worldwide level. Sarah, this one is for you. I will not forget you. I will not allow others to forget you. I will make sure our people remember you and know your name. Black America, I find you guilty of murder. You're slowly killing the black woman with your blatant disrespect for black womanhood. We have pimped our daughters and mothers for platinum record sales, new cars with big rims and mansions, while Eve's daughters drop it like it's hot for crumpled dollar bills and the chance to be nominated the year's best video vixen. We spit on Sara Baartman's memory, and Harriet is turning over in her grave while Sojourner stands at the throne of the Almighty praying, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Do you? Do you understand what you have done, what you are doing? How many black women came before you and played the maid and prostitute so you wouldn't have to? How many of us have turned down roles because we valued how the world viewed black women? But not today's daughters. For a few dollars, they feed into America's jungle bunny fantasy, shaking their fangs half naked with a smile upon their faces, but their eyes say, "Save me from myself." And where is black America? We are on the sidelines cheering because baby girl is no longer a resident of the ghetto. She's riding in Bentleys or Benzes draped in furs and diamonds, and the record label just bought her a fat house. But have we forgotten? Massa always kept his main hoe close to the big house or a house to call her own, as long as she opened the door when he came knocking. And he will be coming back. It's so sad. Back then we were forced to degrade ourselves to the level of being some man's whore. Today we willingly degrade ourselves. The black woman has become America's #1 whore. We fought that label for so many years, but here our daughters came along and solidified the deal. But many of us sold our daughters to them. We sold them for houses with jacuzzi-sized bathtubs and the chance to say, "That's my baby on TV." Have we no shame? No guilt? We can't blame the white man for this one. In concert stadiums all over the world, our black men proclaim to the world that his women are bitches and hoes. It's so common, some of us think that this is our name and answer to it. We have forgotten our grandmother's pain, her struggle to carry the burden so we wouldn't have to. Do you hear the ancestors crying out, "Is this what we died for?" I say no. Wake up, black woman. Wake up, black America. Take back your dignity. The power is in your hands.
These are when you talk about the rituals and the sacrifices and this and that. These are the guys that's doing the math work on it, creating the algorithms, working on the D-Wave technology, trying to open up, creating a way to mimic the rituals of the ancient ones that they following to find ways to bring them here. All of that crazy stuff, that's these guys. Who are they? They are an independent group of elite scientists. There you go. Elites, right? Which advise the U.S. government on matters of science and technology, mostly of a sensitive nature. Sensitive. Operative meaning sensitive, meaning extrasensory perception. Understand? Psychics, telepaths, telekinesis, people into telekinesis, remote viewers, those are all called sensitives. You understand? Right? The group was created in the aftermath of the Sputnik launch. This is the Soviets now. Launch as a way to reinvigorate the ideas of having the nation's preeminent scientists help government with the defense problem, similar to the way scientists helped in World War II, but with a new and younger generation. It was established in 1960 and has somewhere between 30 and 60 members. 3 and 6, right? Or 3 sixes. You understand? 30 and 60, 3 6, right? 3-6 scientific mafia. Started in 1960 in a result that mimicked how the scientists helped them in World War II. Who were the scientists that helped them in World War II? Where did they come from? Nazis. The white ones. The white Nazis. Right? But with its first gained public notoriety as a source of the Vietnam's War McNamara line electronic barrier. The McNamara line electronic barrier was used during a CIA operation to help a CIA operation referred to as Air America. Air America, which was also a movie done about it with Mel Gibson and Robert Downey Jr., was all about the CIA establishing a fake air courier service that they was really moving drugs and cocaine and heroin and stuff from Laos, out of Laos, which they was supposedly not able to get into. Wasn't supposed to be in, I should say. Everybody got it? So these are the same people. Although most of his research is military focused, J.A.S.O.N also produced early work on the science of global warming and acid rain. See? Current unclassified research interests include health informatics, cyber warfare, renewable energy, all of the crap that these people are trying to shove down our throats today, right? This is where it's coming from specifically. There's the public side of the J.A.S.O.N Society, of course, where they will give you a kind of breakdown of who they are. But then the other side, again, is totally black box. You can't get into that. J.A.S.O.N typically performs most of its work during the annual summer study. Its sponsors include the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy and the U.S. intelligence community. Isn't that great? The name J.A.S.O.N, sometimes explained as an acronym, meaning what? July, August, September, October, November, the months in which the group would typically meet, or tongue-in-cheek for the junior achiever. It just also happens to be those are the heaviest sacrificial months. Look at how many people died. Heavy people died societal-wise since J.A.S.O.N started. Do you want better? Go back and look at all of the hits that went down between July and September for the past 10 years. You will bug out. Yep. Yes. But it's actually based on what? Greek mythology, right? See, again, the Hercules thing. Again, always taking it back to Greek mythology because that is their veil for the satanic Areopagite sacrificial, Transangothian magic Harishef stuff they've been doing. Yeah, we're going to get to her in a second. because Ginsburg was also a pro-pedophilia candidate, because she come from that whole Ginsburg thing. It was what's her name, Ginsburg, and then there was Allen Ginsburg, remember? And he was part of NAMBLA. And what was NAMBLA? The Man Boy Love Association, right? Another veil for the Herculean, baby-eating, homosexual rituals. J.A.S.O.N studies have included the now mothballed system for communicating submarines, extremely long-wave radio waves, boom, boom, boom. Project Seafarer, representing Poseidon. Project Sanguine, meaning Project Blood, right? So, boom, all of that goes into DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency. This research project agency is responsible for the development of emerging technologies used by the military. Originally known as the Advanced Research Project Agency, the agency was created in February, when? 1958. When was what you call it, J.A.S.O.N created? 1960, right? Boom. So this is before, right? And then it was implemented by Dwight D. Eisenhower in response to the Soviet launching of Sputnik 1 in 1957. By collaborating with the academic, industry, and government partners, DARPA formulates and executes research and development projects to expand the frontiers of what? Technology, science, often beyond immediate U.S. military requirements. So when we talk about the gematria and how they sacrifice people and how they use the numbers and the geographic location and the wind time and all of that, like if you was a sniper, like you have to take into account the so-called rotation of the earth, the wind, the sun, you know what I'm saying? When, at what time the moon is going to rise, like you gotta, and then you gotta just calculate all of that for 1 second of motion. So all of so-called United States technology, United States government, or United States whatever, is run through these mechanisms. Which is why, again, it's the first time in history that an artificial intelligence has been basically sued in court. You know what I'm saying?
Can you get the other one in the drawer?
Because they
grabbed out of them houses, or they went to a function and they never came back. Just a whole picture with Janelle Monáe showing you prestigious people that was being taken and put on this acre of land. This acre of land happened to be in Louisiana, and they didn't even know they was being captive. When they captured them, they would redesign their hair and they would put them on some heavy drug, man. Like this drug would totally make them forget who they are. And if you don't think they have that type of drug today, you're crazy. It's called MK Ultra, the butterfly flag. And the reason I know this picture was telling us true, they give us too many clues. Now, it's one thing to show that they have modern day slavery on land. And I'm telling you something that is factual. They're giving us jewels. Satan has to tell us truth before Most High decide to destroy this place. Inside the Americas, it's a lot of land out here. There's places that you cannot go because there's no trespassing, it's private property. But they decide to do it different. In the picture of Janelle Monáe, they showed you that they made a fake land to look like slavery, like they was in 1700 fighting, and it was all costume and parties, and the people that was invited there could not bring cell phones, and they had to stay for a long period of time, you know, and then the next people would come in. Well, this man had property, and he decided to make his own plantation in modern day, I would say Rome. The cell phones was still here, but these people was on such a high drug. Whenever they came, the first thing they was asking was, "What's your name?" And didn't they do this to us in slave time? They didn't want us to ever know our heritage. So in Hebrew times, when they brought us over here on slave ships, they would ask us our name, and we would say it in Hebrew. Like I would say, Yash ala Quarah. They would whip my ass until I said something like Fred. Oh, okay, you're good. You get what I'm saying? You can never say who you were in your past And this is truth because that puts you in remembrance. So in the picture, they give them a drug, and when they bring them to this quarters, they say, "What's your name?" And they wanted to see if you had any remembrance because they drugged you on as heavy. And if you didn't respond, they would brand you and they would see, that's the whole trick. And I'm telling you something, that drug that they put you on is real. That's that drug they put you on when you go to the nut house. You forget who you are, man. MK Ultra do the same thing. They shoot them up and they don't know who they are, and then they program them. Now, how did we know this picture was about telling you the truth that everything is programmed? Especially when you get higher up, even if you have a prestigious degree and you're working for a prestigious corporation. And everything, Janelle Monáe in this film had a butterfly effect. If you didn't peep that, you lost, because this whole entire picture was showing you number of butterflies, a butterfly screenshot, butterfly book, butterfly seminar. So the butterfly in Illuminati world represents MK Ultra mind control. So you're probably saying, okay, why would they put that in a film with Janelle Monáe? Because it just didn't. Oh, it makes a whole lot of sense. They're telling us, okay, this is a picture that's supposed to be a fictional characters, and we're just giving you a film. But I'm going to show you these butterflies and see if y'all can put this shit together. Because what they're showing us and what they was telling us, this shit really goes on. What you talking about, Yash? Pause. Shit, I just said it. This shit goes on, man. A lot of times when you see kidnap, they're not kidnapping you because it's just something to do. And sometimes it's not about your organs. Now, why do they kidnap more black women than any women? Because the plantation got to be real. When they kidnap these black women, you know, they never get seen again. They be raping these black women, having babies with them so they can turn the babies into slaves. I know y'all probably don't understand what I'm saying right now because it's too far-fetched. It's like, oh, come on. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they decide, okay, we cannot do this on top of the surface because someone's going to see us with all the technology and the drones. We got to do this different. So they decide to go underground. That's different, huh? They got the money. Now, when they first started this thing, they stayed on top. Like, we're talking late 1800s, early, when they started capturing prestigious black folk, they did it like they did back in the day. They had a lot of land. Did nobody come there? And so they were able to put them back in slavery. They already was in a slave frame of mind. So in modern day Rome, as I say, got here with the phones and all that, they had to be clever. So they decided to do underground. Now, what else do they do underground? They do the rituals. You know, they do the rapes. They do the molestation underground. You never hear it, right? Soundproof rooms and shit. Well, some people got a lot of money. They just don't do it underground. They literally have money where they have built these places underground just like bunkers, but it looks just like a damn school. I want you to understand what I'm saying now. This exists. Now, I'm not saying in every town and every state. I'm saying that there's prestigious states that the rich folks have gotten together, the ones that's very statistics and Satanism, and they're not just making, these guys don't make $1 million a year. Some of these guys make $100 million a year. So you get 5 or 6 of these guys, shit, $600 million rolling. They're not going to want for anything. So they can make this thing be anything they want. And they put time into it. So now when they capture you, I'm not saying that they still don't do it on the surface. The ones that's copycatting, they still do theirs on the surface. But the ones that have the money and prestigiousness, they do it underground. So when you hear about certain people being captivated and in captivity, like what happened? She just left. She's probably in an underground world being raped and made to believe she's a slave. And he's made to believe he's a slave. They captured professors, man. Like PhD females that was really highly educated. Them the ones they want. Now watch this. How did she find Janelle Monáe? If you ain't saw this film, you should go get it at the Red Box. I streamed it live because I didn't want to go to the Red Box and then take it back. Even though it's $1 or $2, I don't mind paying $4 to stream it. At first, it's $14.99. That was ridiculous. Now they lowered it to $4.99, which is okay. So if you haven't seen it on Redbox, just go check shit out. For some reason, Apple TV just streams so slow. Apple TV, when you be watching stuff, it cuts off. And for that to be $1 billion company, they haven't got the streaming right for Apple TV yet. So pause on that and go to Redbox. So I'm making I'm trying to get you to see this because my time is clicking, right? Before I run out. So this is, they followed her. Now the daddy was obsessed with her. Now check this. I want you to understand something. The daughter and daddy was in cahoots with each other. He would send his daughter to go scout. And you know how black men are gullible with white chicks. And she would set the black dudes up, probably give them some punani. And then next thing you know, this nigga on a horse, you know. So what I'm trying to tell you, I'm not saying every white woman is into this type of ordeal. But what I am telling you is that you got to be more circumspect. This is the reason why when you start speaking about politicalism and how to eat healthy, your target, these are the type of people they want on their plantation. At the same time, they want, and they're the FEMA camps. So now we go from plantation to FEMA camps with the same thing. But what's the difference between the FEMA camps and plantation? It's a mixture. Because you got a lot of liberal white folks. Now they own them FEMA camps and they're making them to slaves. So you got white folks out here that see truth. And then when they write their books, they tell the truth about black culture, of how they was captivated, manipulated, and tricked. So those are type white folks they want. They don't want the white girl living in a trailer park or the one that's trying to get her master's. They want the white girl that's liberal and tell truth and understands this world the way it is. These are the type of white women they capture and they put in these FEMA camps for enslavement. The FEMA camp just didn't exist right now. It's been going on a long time. So half the people you think that are kidnapped and missing, they're not. They're slaves somewhere. I know it's crazy, but it took the picture of Janelle Monáe to spark it. And I think the most interesting thing is that the girl who was interested in her watched her. Now, if you watch the movie, she said she didn't really like her, but her daddy was obsessed with her. So he sent his daughter to get her. See, not only do they set up the black men with the woman, but they set up the woman with the white woman. So she took a call, a video call, like a FaceTime, and she thought the girl wanted to talk about her book, and she was really mocking her. And you got to pay attention to how she was talking to her. I'm just out here coaching. Pause. She was not coaching. She was scouting. And we didn't, and like I say, being in truth, you pick up on things. Okay. And they would just mess with her head. They would send little children around and all these people were prestigious people. And I'm going to tell you how they do it. They've got certain areas that they want to captivate certain black women. Like they may say, we want 5 prestigious black women from Washington, D.C. And they'll go out, they'll first go in there because black people put everything on the internet, who they are. And that's how they get you, man. You go on Facebook, you go on Instagram, you want to show your babies off. You want to show how smart they are. You want to show that you're coming from a bright family. And they looking at like, oh, look at this one. Her daughter's just as smart as her. Her daughter's only 6 years old. You think everybody's happy for you. You think that everybody's cheering you on. You have probably 5% of the people that's clapping. But 95% of people are trying to find a way to put you in captivity. And this is why Yash said be circumspect, careful in conversation and people you meet. And we don't do it. And the liberal white women and white men don't do it. We got to tell everybody what we know. And that's what put a bullseye on you. And there's nothing wrong with doing it. But why you got to have a meet and greet? Why you got to tell people where you're going to be? Look, man, this world is ran by evildoers. You can't win. Your arm's too short to box with Satan. You got information, just spit it out there on audio and just let it ride. And whoever hits is going to hit. You're not going to save the world. Like I said before, there's 320 million Americans. 300 million going to fall to their death. And I know you probably can comprehend that. And it's too far-fetched for you to get that. But it's going to happen. America is done. And you're going to start seeing people die left and right. I mean, not just by the tens and 20s, by the thousands. You ever seen a body of land of nothing but death and the stench of blood in the air? That's America. That's where we're at. And that's where we're headed. It doesn't matter what president wins. We're headed for civil unrest on American soil to kill 300 million Americans. You probably say, how's that going to happen? Easily. You can make anything airborne. You just start killing them. I mean, you may not understand what I'm saying. It may sound really cruel and harsh, but life is harsh. You don't know the drones they got and set. You don't know half the technology they got. When they start putting these drones up like they plan to, and these drones start dropping whatever they want them to drop, communities will be deadly affected. They're not going to bounce back, man. Ain't no rebuilding. It's done. And they also have the control of the harp. Now, we've been saying this for 15 years, and people be like, man, that ain't true. They had a machine that they can damn near control the weather. Yah gave Satan a lot of power down here. He let Satan run this bitch the way he feel. And this is why this was our biggest task and our biggest test to survive this 400-year ordeal, and to know the rabbit hole is so deep that everything that looks great is not great. And we have to understand that we're still in the metrics even when we wake up. I want you to understand what I just said. You're still in the metrics when you still wake up. So you're saying, what's that mean? Once you wake up, now you have to wait on a higher spirituality to get you out of the bubble that you're currently living in. Because the metrics first it's like a MK Ultra, because you believe college education and get a good job. That's what you're taught. That's generation. See, that's right there is robotic thinking. Everybody thinks the same way. So once you think outside of that, oh shit, you woke up. But guess what? Now you're more deadly because people know you know truth. You can see it a mile away. That's why every time you go for it, people stare at you crazy. You gotta understand something. When you wake up, your light is on. Once your light is on, the demons know you're awakened. So they got to try to silence you. And how they do that, they try to find your likes. What do you like? What is it that we can get them on? So with men, it's usually always sex. So they'll send the baddest white chick they can, or some chick to allure you into her bedroom, and that's how they get you. With women, it's always prestigiousness, like financial. Women are always looking for financialness. That's cash flow. They look for, what else? They look for clothing. Women love clothing and cars. So they know how to cater to your ego. And when they give you that, they invite you to these places. And then next thing you know, you wake up on a horse. So black folks got to stop being so materialistic on bullshit. And you got white chicks out here the same way. You notice lately they've been kidnapping a lot of white women. Literally white women that's very educated. You got to pay attention to that, guys. And now these women are not missing. They're being kidnapped for reasons. Okay? This shit just don't happen out the blue. A lot of white men been kidnapped. It's not about race. It's never been about race. And I know a lot of y'all can't comprehend that when you're Christian. And you'd be like, well, what's slavery about? Slavery was about Deuteronomy 28. The Most High let that happen because we are his chosen people, Negroes. We was on our 7th time breaking his covenant. So America's with our 7th time. And it was our last time, 7 being the end to a new beginning. That's why this time he has to separate the 2/3 from 1/3. It's because he's tired of saving us all, and the 2/3 make us go right back to the same position as before. 7 times. Black people are the only people has been in captivity 7 times.
And so now you become the aberration. Now you be the one that when you walk in the room, people stop talking. When you used to walk in the room, everybody, yo, what's up? Blah, 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 right? Because now you're not eating a pork. Now you're not believing in Joe Biden. Now you're not into voting. Now you're not into, you know what I'm saying? Whatever. Right? You the problem now. Because what? What's the real problem? You understand? This is a psychological, this is a phenomenon that happens with people who regain consciousness of who they are. But what happens? What really happened? What really happened is that you rejected the God of the land that you're in. You understand? You rejected on a fundamental level the idea that these people have a godhood above you. Why should the Palatine Moors be suffered to swarm into our settlements? They will never adopt our customs any more than they can adopt our complexion. All of Africa, Asia, and the Americas are swarthy black. Russia, Italy, Spain, France, the Swedes, and the Germans are black. The principal whites are made up of Saxons and English. The Scots, the Welsh, the Irish are not Saxon or English. So that means that they're all what? Black. When Benjamin Franklin writes this essay, 1751, the black German king George II is sitting on the throne of England. Period. So they didn't go from the 1700s all being black to the 1800s to all being black to then, boom, 1900, now everybody white. And what popped it off worldwide? The birth of a nation, right? That's when black people basically became non-descendable. Non-descendable, meaning that there were millions of people living in the West that were not African, but were reclassified as Africans. And because of that reclassification, they had become non-descendable. If your skin was dark, then it was believed that you were from Africa, and therefore your indigenous nationality was stripped from you. You understand? Yeah. So this is all of this compounded. So this present situation that we're in, or that we found ourselves in, was basically mandated or predisposed by these people. And in various other organizations like the Gates Foundation, the CDC, the World Health Organization, they all correspond to this in their own way. So being that the tectonic plates on this side of the planet is shifting to such a degree, also based on all the inner turmoil that's happening both above and below the ground, they are now trying to implement this Agenda 21 situation basically to reduce most of the country into wildlife, turn it back into preserve. Basically, let all the animals free and put all the humans in what they call smart cities. That's what the sanctuary city was about. When Trump came in office and started the purge on the Mexicans, he created like a declaration of war. And so everybody that was left basically chose sides, and they did it along the party lines and basically worked from that point on to destroy the United States from within by passing legislation that would be so heinous or so whatever that by the time he get out of one situation, there's another one he got to deal with. Now, remember I told you, for those people that don't understand, there's two separate United States basically congruently in conflict with one another. But neither one of those has anything to do with us. Well, one of them do, but even that one only deals with us as the inheritors of the governmental function. Anyone have any questions while I'm looking this up? Yeah, anything through the preamble to the 7th article specifically was about everybody that was here prior to them setting up the craziness. You know what I mean? And then everything else from there to the 14th was basically all of the people's coming in trying to benefit from the Europa thing and the being that they were freed up from Europa to a certain degree, and then also from participating in forced servitude. Sorry, babe. So look at it like this. This would be a white man. This would be free Moor or freeman. This would be basically an American Indian. You know what I mean? During the time we're speaking of what we're speaking about. Instead of what we've been taught to understand as that. This ain't Lincoln. This is, I believe, Doug Meade, who was one of the people in the Congress. Yes. So at the time of the 1787, if you notice, prior to that, you had the subjects of Morocco or the Emperor of Morocco sending a message to the Sultan, basically wanting to be freed up from whatever was happening with them in the United States in terms of the bondage. You notice they had what you would consider American names, like regular names, meaning white people names. And they have names like Muhammad and stuff like that. So around the time of the Treaty of Peace of Friendship, you had an influx of Irish, Welsh, and Scottish, these type of people coming over here. But remember, as we just read in the Franklin Declaration, all of these people was melanated. But it was said that if they was to be pledge allegiance again to the Sultan of Morocco, then they would fall under that protection. You see what I'm saying? This became the free white people. Who had been here or had been traveling back and forth through here under the ancient protection of the Moorish Empire, but then when certain, let's say when Britain took over Ireland or whatever, those Moors that was already there, you see, who was at war with the British Empire, whatever, they still was cool with the Moroccan. So they could still politic through British territories if they was under Moroccan jurisdiction, you see. So during the 1787, you'll notice the influx of these people, and all of these people claiming protection under the Sultan of Morocco, even though they weren't technically what you call Moroccans, but they became subjects of, you see, because the Moroccan Empire was over the British Empire. But all of these people we talk about is melanated to varying degrees. Understand? Not white the way we've been taught to understand them. So I'm just using these as examples of what the people that we're talking about was actually dealing with or look like. At the time we're speaking. So another example would be a white man from France, right? So you understand how nationality in plays and how color was really injected later. So this is an example. This is a German, one of the oldest German houses, right? The Schwarzenberger, which is the home, which is the parent of the Schwarzenegger. And then this right here is Ptolemy, right? One of the Ethiopian Christ, because Ptolemy is basically that dynasty is connected to the Sabaean Ethiopians, Cleopatra. And then this is Dumont. Alexander Dumont wrote Count of Monte Cristo, Three Musketeers, and all of that. Who was the number 2 for Napoleon. Now, all 3 of these people right here, which I'm showing you, would be or are considered white. These are white men as well. Understand what I'm saying? Because this is the caste that these people is dealing with. Yes, white is a status. White is always in status. It'll never have nothing to do with color. That's what I was showing you with the last situation. See, I showed you how the so-called American, the American U.S. citizen, the Moor, and then the American Indian. They all the same color, but they all occupy different statuses. So the Abraham-looking dude, it was white too. Just like this German dude right here on this coat of arms of the Schwarzenberger. This is a real family. But as you see, he has the Roman laureate around his head, just like he do, because this is the same. These guys right here, these are all Romans too. Understand? They're all Romans. They're also all Ethiopians, because this is the root. We're going to the root of where all of the cultures is coming from, and essentially this is all from the Roman line. But that Roman line has a byway of India, which is the Hindu connection, right? Which then brings us to Babylon, then into Old Europe, and then by way of France into what we call the Americas. You see, in terms of the occult aspect of how all of this was used to then shape the world where we look at it now in reverse. Because it wasn't about color. Everybody was white, or when they talking about they was a white man and this, they talking about the status of the individual that had come into play by the British by 1681. And these whites had whites under them, W-I-G-H-T, slaves that they tended to use with each other as commerce or whatever. Yes, white, black. So when you had the U.S. coming in now to enact different codes, right, that would then affect how they did business with their other nations. Remember, there's other nations that's already here, that's invested and has already been making and spending money. Like I said, Russia had colonies here, Britain had colonies here, whatever. So the United States government, even though it made deals with Britain and stuff like that to establish itself, still, in a sense, was a threat, was not as friendly to monarchies as the monarchies would have liked, because again, technically it was like they was giving people free choice. And all of these monarchies was still in bed with the United States. I mean, was still part of these so-called royal families. So you have some of them backing it, some of them not. And so you have all of these world powers on all of these different land masses that's now trying to find ways to maintain control over what was left. So for instance, this is the Sundance Kid. Right? And then on your left, in the middle and the left is a Sundance Kid. The real Sundance Kid, and then when he was in the army, and then second when he was the outlaw, and then the other one on the left is now Filbert II, who was from the house of Savoy, who by which Kid and his family allegedly descend from through a Savoy house. Now, the House of Savoy, like I said, is an old Ethiopian Roman house, originally descended from those first so-called Ethiopians who settled at Liabella and then moved the capital to Axum after routing the original dynasties that was there after they were kicked out of India, and then merged their iconography, their gods, under the icon gods of the so-called Christian faith, and then adopted Christianity as the official religion, I think, under Azania, King Azania the First, I think. And then they became, let's say, a Roman, so-called Christian nation, which is why they didn't go to war with Rome like that, because that was their satellite kingdom. Because the mothers, the dowagers, the rich people of Ethiopia went to Rome, or what was becoming Rome, and they became the rape mothers of Romulus and Remus's people. You see? And from there, the aristocracy of Rome always looked to Ethiopia as their true forefathers. And so anybody that became the king of Rome by way, anybody that became king of Ethiopia via Rome became known as the king of Italy. You understand? And so these descendants were also descendant and also had people who they had to do knowledge with here in the States, because they had married into these families, remember? And so they went to war with each other, same way they doing it with each other now, but we did it back then. And so when you talk about these outlaws, like I said, Butch Cassidy, Sundance Kid, Billy the Kid, Bass Reeves, who was really the Lone Ranger, Tonto, all these people was real. You understand? Yes. So the House of Savoy, again, the Roman side, i.e. the Christian side, started again with these Indian pseudo-black people who set up shop in Ethiopia, created a subcolony in Italy, and then used the subcolony in Italy to invade Africa by proxy via different agents, and then eventually reorganized it as the Byzantine Empire in the West. So those Jesuit Catholics, those original Catholics that we're talking about, all these people is black people. Who are using these pawns, these political situations. So when they was robbing these banks and all of that back in the days, and all of that, that was them striving to bankrupt different aspects of the Confederacy or the Republic, depending on who was paying them to do that. So all these stories are talking to us about Davy Crockett. Davy Crockett was a black man. How did a white man come over here fresh off the boat, within a year knew how to go up and down the creek and all of that? Just give us the stories in reverse. And again, we don't go through and do the knowledge, so it becomes fact. Like, for instance, this is an image again of the master and the slave. How it was really going down in the time period versus what they tell us. See the tall Algerine, the master, the slave, the Persian dancer, the eunuch. That's why he got the sword over his joint. Examples of what I'm talking about in terms of who ruling and who doing what. Sign of slave ship. You see, he got the sword, the star. Because the Algerines, the Tangerines, the Mandarines, all of these is black people. We've seen this picture but nobody ever told us this is one of the sultans of Morocco, dressed as a Themin warrior. Themin being one of the groups, clans of the Hausa. So again, you had different people who were here, who were so-called melanated or whatever, who, for whatever political reason, decided to go into a different national identity, whether it was Moorish or whatever, and then but did it to the point that they could no longer define by which they actually descended from. You see what I'm saying? And now these non-descendables get grouped under the Negro black thing, and because they have no state to vouch for them, you see what I mean? It becomes this errant situation where we can no longer vouch for each other based upon our nationality. Because again, you gave that up to go into that. Like I said, you had British, Welsh people who were so against the British that they all pledged allegiance to the empire. You know, it became Moors. You understand? And then through that got them passage over here. You see? And then they hooked up with they people who was already here, who lived on the colonies as British citizens, but they couldn't really rock with them because, again, the British was at war over who was ruling Ireland or England or whatever at the time. And again, like I said, this was now the nobles going against each other. This is the Bruces going against the House of Stuart and all of that. But all of these are black people. That's what we got to remember. That's where we get it twisted because we're looking at it again from the bottom up. But we were really in it from the top down. So here again is another example of a Christian Jewish king, a sultan of Morocco, right? And then a so-called native king. So the cultures that we refine or refer to as Native American, whatever, you know, it's or American Indian, lack of a better word. It's cool because it takes you out of the misnomer of the black situation. The only issue then becomes the traditional concept of identifying one along a actual landmass. That's where bridging the name or the nationality with the geographic location comes into the word Moorish American. See what I'm saying? Yet, if you're speaking then of yourself of the so-called Moorish people, the individual or the plural, you could be a Moor, as in peace Moor or Islam Moor. You see? So, for instance, one of the winner sheiks, right? The fez with the horn, representing, let's say, American Indian or winner sheik or a Scolia or whatever. Here again is James, King of England, Scotland, Norway, right? Who's also Hebrew, but is also seen as Christian, right? And then here then is the Sultan, you see, representing the so-called Islamic Moorish side of things. With James, albeit these in the same era, this maybe James being this picture representing James maybe 150 years before these guys was here, but it should still get the point. Right. And remember, the queens or the daughters of the English royal family were taught at the halls of Cordova. So now if we flip it a little, we just got to remember that everything that we were given in terms of instruction, TV, or whatever, was still filtered through the alternative reality that they created that we refer to as Reconstruction. So the black people became white, the white people became black in order to keep the general machine of the United States functioning, to be able to draw out of it what they needed to perpetuate this or aspects of this reality. Mm. And if we put it like this, this is now bringing the color thing into it. So now, instead of James, we get the followers of James through the colorism factor, through the Freemason thing. This is Thornton Jackson. This is the guy that worked with Albert Pike to reframe the so-called morals and dogma to help establish the KKK and flip the whole black people into slave thing by the 1900s. See him with the triple cross on, right? So technically, this then would be a white man. See? This now is a red Indian. See? This is now a renegade Indian or a wild savage or a Muslim. See what I mean? Yeah, or let's say an Arab. Yeah, it's even better. But these is all original people, just not original from America. He's originally from, his people is originally from Europe. See what I'm saying? His people is originally from America and some from Siberia because he's like a Zambo, right? And then he's straight Mauritanian, let's say indigenous to, let's say America or Western stuff off. So when they was in Persia, you know what I'm saying? They shielded it under Mithra. When they was in Phoenicia, they shielded it with Moloch. You see what I'm saying? When they was in Greece, they used Hercules. When they was in ancient Egypt, they used, Hereshap, or Nekhabet. Nowadays in Hollywood, they call it Baphomet. You understand? It's the same illness. It's an alien entity that has now infested humanity and turned everything in the opposite. So like I said, when we talk about Americans or whatever from this point on, the Europeans, you got to remember we're not talking about white people all the time. When they talk about slaves and all of that, they really talking about white people who really only came into power after the 1900s. See how we go from this more like this to them looking like this. Understand? So when they talk to us about Charles and they talk to us about the European nobility, this is why we all got European names now. They married into us over here. So historically, they don't speak about the House of Bourbon marrying into the Inca family. But the Inca is also the Dinka. Look up the Dinka people. Same people. But the white man spell it different, so it's different. So like I told you, now that certain things ain't work, it's flipping out. So we got to rethink of how we structure our language when it comes to these entities, because they're not really what they are. So when we speak about slaves, we really talking about hostages. When we talk about plantations, we really talking about concentration camps or death camps. We talk about mistresses, we talking about rape victims. We talking about overseers, we talking about renditioners or torturers. Understand? We're talking about slave traders, we're talking about human traffickers. You understand what I mean? Because when we say slave owners, how can somebody own a slave? The only people who could own slaves was the people who brought slaves out, and that was us. How can slaves own anything when they were the ones who were owned? They applied to Lincoln to get free. So that's what I mean about overhauling how we even talk about slavery. So if you say something like, so a white man will write it like, a prominent slave owner never publicly recognized the offspring of one of his slave romances, but allowed him to serve in the house. What that really translates to is that a rich human trafficker raped his female hostage and then held their son hostage as well at the death camp that he owned. Like if you start teaching history like that, white people gonna stop being racist. People gonna stop being what it is. But see, they want you to be able to still be a Negro in it. And you can't not get the real skinny on slavery and still be black in it. Because we were never the blacks in it. We were never really the Indians in it. We were the guys that was running everything, and that eventually things just fell apart. Because too many of us started going into different nationalities for protection. So you had straight Moors who was working with Spaniards, see what I'm saying, against other Moors who was working with Germans. You know what I'm saying? But they all Moors. You had Welsh Moors who was fighting with Irish Moors against Moors from England. All because of George. You see what I'm saying? Anybody have any questions? So the ancient name that the Americans had for China, or those that came from China, was Cathay, Cathay, or the Cathays, right? So the Cathay, or the Chinese, representing the Asiatic, or what we just seen were the Mongols, were the ones that came over in the 13th century, who around the same time through the Atlantic. Also, you get the influx of the Mande Moors coming with Abu Bakr. Eventually leading to what became the unification the West, in which the Zambos were given territory to live at off the buffalo in teepees, while the rest of us that was always here lived in all of the cities and stuff that we always had. Up until the freedom or the extension now of the United States as a country now trying to take over all the other countries that existed on the so-called Northern Hemisphere or Northern Continent. Understand? So in a book called The Origin of the Name Indian, on page 549, it says, in Española, the best district or gold mines on the other side, thence from terra firma, as well as thence from the Great Khan, where everything is on a splendid scale, meaning everything is huge. And again, it goes into the other Italian sailor, Venetian Giovanni Cabato, or as he was called in England, James Cabot. See, you always have different names. James Cabot was actually Giovanni Cabato. Both Moors, right? Made a voyage in 1497.